Prince George is doing his best to keep his younger brother's charming nature in check. When Prince George arrived at Adelaide Cottage with someone unfamiliar by his side, few could guess how Prince William might react. That afternoon, as George stepped out of the car, no one expected him not to be alone. He had just come home from school, dressed in his usual navy blazer and polished shoes, clothes that had become his everyday look at Lambrook. But this time, he wasn't alone. Just behind him, a boy about his age followed closely, wearing clothes that didn't quite fit and sneakers that looked old and torn at the sides. From inside, a staff member froze. It wasn't unusual for George to bring home a stray football, a library book, or tales of new friends. But this was different. The other boy didn't seem like a classmate. He looked lost, unsure if he was supposed to be there. George, meanwhile, appeared confident, eager, like a child who believes he's doing the right thing, ignoring how strange it might seem to adults. Inside, Prince William was looking over documents from an environmental charity. His morning had been filled with routine meetings. He had just changed into a jumper and jeans, ready to spend the day with the kids. Then, a staff member entered quietly. "Sir, you should see this," she said softly, not wanting to alarm him. William could tell from her voice that something unexpected had arrived. As he headed to the hallway, he saw George walking in, holding his backpack strap in one hand and gently nudging the other boy forward with the other. George looked up and gave a faint smile. "Dad, this is Jacob," he said simply. He didn't have anywhere to go. William blinked, caught off guard. He looked at the other boy, who stood with his eyes on the floor, unsure whether to take his shoes off or run outside. "Hello, Jacob," William said carefully. "Why don't you come into the kitchen?" George didn't need any prompting. He led Jacob down the hall as if it was the most natural thing. William followed, still confused but curious about what had just happened. In the kitchen, Kate was unpacking groceries. She turned when she saw the unfamiliar boy standing by her son. "George?" she asked. "Mom, this is Jacob," he repeated. "We were playing football near the school during lunch. He said he lives nearby but isn't in school anymore. When I asked why, he said he doesn't have a home right now." Kate's eyes widened slightly as she watched George and William. It wasn't panic, just a quick wave of adult worry, something that wants to help but needs more details. "I told him he could come with me," George added. "I thought we could help him." The silence afterward was thoughtful. William crouched down, bringing his eyes level with Jacob's. "How old are you, mate?" he asked softly. Jacob answered barely above a whisper. 11. William looked at George. "Same as you?" Jacob nodded. Kate stepped forward and knelt down as well. "Are you hungry?" she asked gently. He nodded again. Soon Kate had laid out toast and fruit on a plate. George sat next to Jacob, pointing out objects around the room like he was giving a tour of his home. The connection between the boys was clear. There was no awkwardness. George wasn't treating Jacob like someone to pity. He was treating him as someone who belonged there. William and Kate exchanged glances. There was no fear in their eyes, but a hint of caution. This wasn't a situation they had trained for. No manual or royal rule prepared them for this moment. After Jacob ate, William asked softly where his parents were. His answers were simple but painted a clear picture. His mom lost her job and they had been moving. Sometimes they slept in their car, sometimes in shelters. He hadn't been to school in months. He didn't complain. He just explained everything honestly, like a kid would. And George listened. That surprised William. His son didn't just hear a sad story and ignore it. He listened and did something about it. Later that evening, after Jacob had new clothes and was playing outside with George and Charlotte, William and Kate sat in the living room. Kate asked quietly, "This isn't just a one-time thing, is it?" William nodded. "No, not for George." He looked out the window, watching the boys laugh while they kicked a ball. Jacob seemed more relaxed now, smiling like he hadn't in days. William remembered how Diana used to take him and Harry to shelters when they were young. She showed them what life was like for others outside the palace. He never forgot that. Now, without anyone asking, George had done something very similar. William just watched quietly. Deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. By morning, everything inside Adelaide Cottage had changed. The peaceful home now carried a quiet new energy. A boy from the streets was sleeping under the same roof as the future king. Jacob was given clean clothes, a warm bed, and treated with respect. Prince George woke early to see if Jacob was still there. He silently walked down the hall, peeked into the guest room, and saw his new friend still sleeping. Jacob was curled under the covers with Lupo's old blanket draped over his legs. Back in the kitchen, Kate was already awake. She held a list in her hand. This wasn't a royal schedule, but a mother's list. It had things to buy, calls to make, chores to do. Though surprised by the situation, she was prepared. She knew the home William and she had built, and she wasn't going to let confusion or fear shake it. Outside, William sat with a mug of tea, reflecting. Growing up in a palace where feelings weren't always welcomed, he spent years learning to connect better with his children. Still, George had gone even further. Later that day, William made some quiet phone calls. He didn't want Jacob's story to become public. It wasn't a news story or charity work. He called a local support center near Windsor, the same one Diana used to visit quietly back in the 90s. He only shared the basic information, keeping George's role out of the story. The woman on the phone asked kindly, "Would you like us to take him?" William hesitated before answering. "Not yet," he said. "Let's keep the door open for now." Inside, George and Jacob sat at the dining table. Charlotte watched nearby, curious but not nosy. Louis, being younger, was mostly interested in Jacob's new trainers. They weren't fancy, just warm and sturdy. George looked at Jacob while chewing toast. He said, "When school starts again, you could wait by the trees. I'll come out as soon as I can." Jacob nodded quietly. He wasn't sure how long he could stay or what rules he should follow. That night, William took George aside for a private talk in the sitting room. There was no yelling or scolding. William didn't believe in that. He knelt down to his son's level. "George," he asked softly, "can I ask you something?" George looked up. "Why did you bring Jacob here?" he asked. There was a long pause. George's mouth twisted, as if he struggled to explain. He looked cold and tired. "He didn't ask me for anything," George said. "He just sat there, and I thought it wasn't fair." William nodded slowly. "You did something very brave," he said gently. "But it's a big thing. It comes with responsibility." George looked unsure. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. William quickly said, "No, you didn't. You did something I admire. I want you to understand what might come next. Jacob's life is different from yours, and he might need help. We can't give him ourselves. Still, that doesn't mean we should walk away." George nodded, understanding enough, even if he didn't have all the answers. "I want to keep being his friend," he said. William replied that we can do that, but we just need to find the right way. That evening, Kate noticed William standing again at the garden window. Jacob and George were tossing a football back and forth, laughing without worry, just like kids should. "Do you think we're doing the right thing?" Kate asked softly. William answered that they're doing the only thing they can. Over the next few days, Jacob stayed with them, fitting in as if he belonged for now. William arranged regular check-ins with local agencies, making sure everything was careful and discreet. They didn't want to scare Jacob or treat him like a case. Kate handled the small details, meals, helping him feel at ease, and making sure he had simple joys like the other kids. She even asked their housekeeper to add his name to breakfast labels. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. George never bragged about what he did, and he rarely talked about it with others. He simply acted like Jacob had always been part of the family. William and Kate saw the difference in their son's posture. He walked taller, not out of pride, but purpose. They saw how he watched Jacob, not to control him, but to include him. They saw their home come to life, more open and real than before. Still, they knew this moment wouldn't last forever. Something was coming, and when it arrived, the world outside those gates might finally see what was happening inside. That Wednesday, the family managed to keep Jacob's presence quiet. But privacy in royal life almost never lasts long. Even William, who had spent years building walls between the world and his private life, knew nothing stays hidden forever. That morning, George and Jacob played in the garden when a staff member approached William with an iPad. She said, "It's starting to spread, sir. Someone posted something yesterday. She mentioned seeing a second boy entering the cottage with Prince George last week. She didn't give names, but people are asking questions." William took the device and read the article. It was not hostile, just curiosity. That's how problems usually start. Someone notices something, and within days, the press begins to investigate, filling in gaps with whatever they can find. Inside the house, George didn't seem worried. Jacob had been with them for several days, and to him, everything felt normal. They played football, watched movies, and read books in the study, just like any school holiday. Jacob even helped Charlotte put together a puzzle the day before. He looked the most relaxed anyone had seen him since he arrived. But William knew this calm wouldn't last. If the story gained attention, Jacob's privacy would be at risk first. He met Kate in the hallway outside the children's rooms. She had just put away laundry and looked calm, but William saw her tired eyes. "They've noticed," he said. Kate nodded slowly. "I figured they might. We need to stay ahead of this without making Jacob feel like he's being moved again," she added. That was their main challenge. For days they had managed to keep things normal for Jacob, something he hadn't had in a while. Any sudden change would make him feel like he was being passed around again. Later that evening, William sat with George and Jacob in the drawing room. There was a fire, and both boys were flipping through an atlas, talking about countries they wanted to visit someday. William waited for a moment, then spoke. "Jacob," he said softly, "can I ask you something?" Jacob looked up. "How would you feel if we found a place nearby for you and your mom? A safe spot where she can get back on her feet and you can stay in school?" Jacob didn't answer right away. He closed his book and stared at the cover. "I don't want to leave," he said. "Not yet." George looked at his father, clearly nervous now. "Can't he stay just a little longer?" William looked between the boys. He wanted to give Jacob and his mother a fresh start, but only if it felt right. "I promise we'll do what's best," he said. That night, William made a call to a local housing support team. They helped families in trouble find places that were close enough for visits, with good schools and services to help. All would be handled quietly and with respect. Kate gently prepared Jacob for the possibility of change, like she always did during big moments, with patience and small steps. She made sure he knew he could talk to her, that nothing would happen suddenly, and that George would still be part of his life no matter what. Then something unexpected happened. On Friday morning, a tabloid's headline caught everyone's eye. "Who is Prince George's mystery friend?" The blurry photo was taken from far outside Windsor, but the message was clear. A new boy was in George's life, and the press wanted answers. William saw it while drinking tea in the kitchen. The words flashed on his screen like a warning. Moments later, Kate entered, already knowing. "What do we do?" she asked. William replied, "We protect them." He didn't mean just George and Jacob, but the whole family. If this story spiraled out of control, it wouldn't just be a whisper on page 6. It would challenge all they had built. A safe home for their children and a life of kindness that wouldn't turn into a spectacle. That afternoon, William talked to the palace's communication team. He didn't want them to deny the story. That would only make it worse. Instead, he asked for silence. No official statements, no photos, nothing to fan the flames. Surprisingly, the media didn't push much. Some news outlets speculated, but most left it alone after a few days, maybe because there was no official response. Or perhaps the story didn't fit their usual stories. Maybe they understood this wasn't a story to spin. Inside the cottage, life went on. George and Jacob stayed close, unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. They played, joked, and whispered secrets like always, confident that the grown-ups were handling things. William watched them through the window one evening as the sunset turned the garden gold. He thought about what kind of king he wanted to be someday. Not just one who gave speeches or cut ribbons, but one who raised a son who cares, acts even when it's hard, and doesn't wait for cameras to do what's right. Still, things were changing. Jacob wouldn't be with them forever. No one knew how soon the next change would happen. Then came a call late on Sunday. Jacob's mother had been found. She was staying nearby in a shelter after leaving a tough situation. Her phone had been stolen, so she couldn't reach her son for days. She searched everywhere, asking support groups, walking near Lamrook School in hope. When the social worker finally told her where Jacob was and who was caring for him, she broke down crying. Prince William took the call himself. He stood in his office, one hand on the chair, the other gripping the phone tightly as he listened. "Yes," he said softly, "we've made sure Jacob felt safe and cared for. And yes, we can arrange a private meeting for both of you." After hanging up, he sat quietly for a moment, expecting this day but still feeling it hit hard. Downstairs, George and Jacob played with Lego. Kate looked up from the kitchen as William entered. He nodded to her. They had found him. Kate exhaled deeply, relief mixing with sadness on her face. Later that night, William took George outside into the backyard. The air was cool, and the sun had just gone below the trees. They walked in silence until William finally broke it. Jacob's mom is safe. She has been looking for him. George blinked and looked down at the grass. So he's leaving. He'll be with her again, but this isn't the end, William said quietly. George nodded slowly, but William saw the worry on his face. He was proud, but a little sad, too. I really liked having him here, George said softly. William smiled. I know, and I think he liked being here, too. You gave him something he won't forget. Later that evening, Jacob was told the news. At first, he stayed quiet. After a moment, he smiled. Can I see her soon? He asked. You can see her tomorrow, Kate replied softly. The next day, a meeting was set up by social services. It was not at the palace or a formal place. It was quiet and safe, so they could reunite without pressure. William and Kate did not go. They wanted Jacob and his mother to share that moment alone. George asked to come too. When they arrived, Jacob hesitated at the door, his fingers trembling. George gently nudged him. She is waiting for you, he said. With that, Jacob stepped inside. The mother and son shared a long, warm hug that lasted nearly 2 minutes. George stood nearby, holding Kate's hand as he watched quietly. After the reunion, plans were set to place Jacob and his mother into temporary housing not far from Windsor. William made sure that Jacob could still see George privately through playdates, school visits, and holidays. That evening at home, George was unusually quiet. Do you think he'll be okay? He asked Kate softly. I think he's going to be more than okay, she replied. Thanks to you? Later in the week, William sat in his office reading letters from palace staff. Some staff members had caught wind of what had happened. A few small-talk rumors or quiet chatter hinted at it, but the messages weren't full of questions. Instead, they were filled with praise, admiration, and thanks that something genuine had happened inside those walls. One letter caught his eye. A gardener had written a short note. I've worked here almost 30 years. I've seen princes, dukes, and future kings, but what your son did was different. William folded the letter and placed it aside. Eventually, the media moved on. Without an official statement or confirmation, the buzz about George's mysterious friend faded. Some headlines wondered and speculated, then it all disappeared. But inside Adelaide Cottage, things were never the same. George was no longer just a boy in a royal house. He was the boy who brought someone home because he saw something others missed. William had always known his son would one day carry the weight of the crown. Now he realized George wouldn't just wear it, he would earn it. It all started with one simple act. George made space for someone else. What do you think of his act of kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. And don't forget to click the video on your screen.